Hi there. It is so wonderful that you're with me today, Chief John Mackey, and we're here to talk with you about smart, safe cities. And I'm just grateful to have you today. So thanks for being with me.
Glad to do it, Melissa. Always glad to help wherever I can.
Thank you. So we're going to start at the top and just ask you, why did you become a law enforcement officer?
Yeah, so that was secondary. I started out as a teacher, and being a teacher, one of the things that someone told me was try to work with all different ages and all different types of people. So I worked in Spanish Harlem. I worked with seniors. I worked with, I guess, very poor sections of our country. And then I was a private school teacher for a small school in Arizona with some of the richest families in the country. And so my goal, special ed, working in special ed was a real important to me. And I've worked with Special Olympics for 45 years. So, but it all came out really with someone, a college professor telling me, try to work with all different types of people you can. And during college, I did a lot of internships, all types of internships, working with Mount Sinai Hospital, brain injury patients, all these types of things. Ultimately, to work with every type of person I could. When I shifted to law enforcement, to be fair, back in those days, I lived to ski. I worked at the ski areas weekends, and I wanted to get out to Colorado. And skiing really was my passion to do that. And one of my friends said, there's just so many jobs in law enforcement as opposed to teaching. It probably would be a good fit for you. And so, fortunately, I grew up in a typical Boston neighborhood where you've had friends since before kindergarten, and they're the same friends I have to this day, which is a blessing that you have those friendships. And one of those friends went to school for law enforcement. There were 4 of us from the neighborhood that went on to law enforcement because one of my very good friends said it's not a bad career to go. When I started doing interviewing for law enforcement, I realized that the background of having worked in Spanish Harlem, having worked with some of these rich families, was helpful because you got to see people at different places. But ultimately, I've always liked working with people. I've always been a people person. And, as a police officer, that comes in handy too, because when I was working with the offender side, I knew those offenders on a personal level because I worked with them. I took canoe trips through the Everglades with juvenile murderers, both boys and then girls. So those early experiences, talking to kids over a several weeks period of time, really helped when I transitioned to law enforcement.
Yeah.
But it started out with a passion for working with people, and then, to be fair, also getting to Colorado. That was something that I wanted to do.
Wow, what an eclectic journey that you've had. A really vast history. I know you've been a chief 4 times, and you talk about your neighborhood in Boston, Quincy, Massachusetts. Most people don't know this. I went to college right across from where you grew up.
Yep. My brother lives 3 doors down.
I know. Yep. It's what a connection you and I have. And then, it's so clear that you come from Boston, that accent, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about, the work of policing. So many people don't really understand it. And when you don't understand something, it's really easy to judge something people don't understand. You know what I mean? And so I would love to get inside of what you just shared. inside of those years where you were working with the juveniles, that you had the compassion and the empathy and the curiosity to, I mean, I would even go as so far as to say to love kids that were murderers. Tell me about what you learned.
You know, I have visited a young man, David. He went in at age 13.
Hmm.
David is now 53. He's only been out 13 days in between age 13 and age 53.
Wow.
And I actually, yeah, and I actually put him back in at age 21 when he got out for 13 days, and he was a one-man crime wave, and David has he can have some evil in him. But I've visited David in prison. He's and operated a large probation program as a nonprofit for 30 years, and used David's letters from prison. And David taught me a lot, and it was interesting. Even with visiting David, he would be so proud of those offenders that he lived with from age 13 to 18 before he got out. So proud to be able to meet with me and let me know that he's proud of his old friends that made a life for themselves, that got out. Now, obviously, all of them didn't. But yeah, ultimately, we're all people. You want to see the best in people. David did some terrible things, but boy, could he write. He just had a beautiful ability to write and to connect with families and other parents that know you don't want to give up. That's it. I mean, a mother generally won't give up. A lot of times you'll see a father give up. Mother will never give up. And I will say sometimes that was a lesson too. So yeah, there's, it's difficult just talking about this. There's so many lessons. If you brought up certain things, I can come up with a story because lots of kids that turned into maybe lifetime parole prison type folks, and one of them I've had who I've known. I shouldn't say. I got an email yesterday from a long time, from 1983. So I guess that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Who I've kept in contact all the years. Who's done tremendous things in his life. So ultimately it's working with people. I've always enjoyed working with people. Law enforcement gave me the opportunity to try to work with people and also better communities, strengthen communities, find out what is difficult in the community, work towards it. And a lot of times the offenders, as you well know, can impact that community. And I'm happy, I've worked with the offender side for a long time, and I'm happy to talk to them. And I've been to every prison in the state, dozens of times with many of them. So, but ultimately it comes back to working with people.
Yeah. Working with people. So and because I know you support victims and you support the offenders. What is working with victims taught you?
I without going into details, I have early on in my career had a close person become a victim of a very violent crime. The offender has been in prison 45 years. I know firsthand that's a lifetime issue for that person and their families in so many ways. And so, having talked with many survivors for multiple sessions, you'd learn that sometimes that survivor's mother never told somebody about the incident that occurred to them 30 years ago, and they're telling you what goes on. So I know on a personal level how that never leaves you. I know how important it is to try to regain control. and I, when I was talking to a victim early on, I knew there's so much going on in that person's head, but I'd say, you can't let those, 3 minutes of trauma, or even a day-long trauma ruin the rest of your life. You need to work on, and having known full well myself how difficult that can be, you can only rely on the professionals and, not to move forward, but obviously that's why I'm with the eBodyGuard, because it can do those things.
So you became a law enforcement officer, you worked with kids, you worked with victims, you worked with offenders. And over your career, you seem to retire, and then you seem to go back to work, and then you seem to retire, and then you seem to go back to work, and you don't actually retire. You've been a chief 4 times. How'd you become a chief the first time? I mean, like, that's a career path where you decided. I think you went to Lakewood, right, for a while.
Yeah.
And then
20 years.
Yeah. So, like, where did the chief thing come into play? And tell me about that. Like, how did you know I want to become a chief?
Yeah, actually it evolved. The good thing with Lakewood was it was always strive to do better, and it was okay if better was elsewhere. And as a result, Lakewood's a small town. Oh, I'd call a small town of 150,000. Coming from Boston, I always thought of Lakewood as a small little town.
Oh yeah, I know. We grew up on the East Coast, and these are small towns in Colorado. Yeah.
It wasn't until an academy where one of the recruits said, but Chief, that's one of our biggest cities. And I thought, well, good point. It doesn't matter what I think; it matters what you think.
Their perspective.
And so, Lakewood always. It was okay to look elsewhere, and having trained lots of new officers and who wanted to go elsewhere, I'd say, this is a pretty good place. Don't always jump. The grass isn't always greener. But, you're always looking as well. And, ultimately, Lakewood has probably had one of the highest percentages, I'm guessing the highest percentage in the country, of officers that have gone on to be police chiefs. So I think we're somewhere around 80. So for a small agency to have 80 officers go on to be police chiefs across the country, it's all because it only began in like 1969. The city was incorporated. A lot of good things, a lot of good things that led to good policies and procedures, and ultimately it was the first agency in the country, now that I think about it, that required a college degree. So back in 1969, 1970, that was an unusual thing, but they were the first one to do it. I won't say that's the answer for all things, but it was it put Lakewood on the map. So I spent 20 years there, thoroughly enjoyed it, got very involved in Lakewood, and had a lot of good success there.
When I started working with law enforcement, I think it was about, I don't remember, almost 20 years ago now. In Colorado, there was this reputation that Lakewood had about creating chiefs, right?
Yeah.
Right. Where did that come from?
It came. The first thing was there was a presidential report came out of Washington in the late 60s. It was the idea of, what do you want law enforcement to look like in the future?
Yeah.
And the Lakewood City Council took that report, and they hired a gentleman, Pierce Brooks, out of California, and gave him that task. And the first thing was they weren't going to call them officers; they were going to call them agents. The idea of the FBI, and then they were going to put them in a suit jacket rather than a typical uniform. You were going to have a blazer. We called it the blazer. So that's what people understood. And that went on for about a dozen years. When Lakewood agents wore blazers. The problem is people didn't recognize you as your police officer. So that transition. So those two things were unusual in the time. College boys, we were called college boys, and the department were in the blazers. Ultimately, it's a team event. Law enforcement is a team event. Hopefully, it permeates through local, state in federal agencies. But for the first 20 years of my career, up until 9/11, we operated in silos. It wasn't until after 9/11 that we got through that. So anyway, what happened was that Lakewood started with the presidential report, the idea of getting a whole group of college-age people. You had PhD officers, and you had a bunch of type A personalities who were hard chargers.
Oh yeah.
And so so to be fair, in Colorado, that's what the other city managers want. And so the reason I retired and went back to work, I got phone calls. Do you want to come work for us? I wasn't planning to go back to work. I got a phone call, but to be fair, because I started at Lakewood, and that was the reputation at the time.
I love some of the things as we look back over the history of Colorado law enforcement. We've done some, and I can't say that I'm part of it, but I would say that the e-discovery system I was a part of. But you law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs in Colorado in particular, you've done some pretty magnanimous, great things together. I mean, you started with, wasn't it like the Democratic National Convention that you guys were able to form unification strategies, and then that parlayed into the CISC, right?
Yeah.
And then you guys had what are some other things that you guys did together that was pretty great? What else happened?
You're right. I mean, the DNC Colorado was 2008, but we started planning it, and I was a mountain chief at the time.
Okay.
But I wanted to be part of that because that was back in Denver.
Yeah.
And so I said, boy, how do I get there? Well, there was another chief opening down in Denver, and it was a area campus, a large 50 student campus in Denver. And so I was very involved in the planning and operation of the DNC and also the IACP into the following year. So we had DNC and IACP back to back in Denver, Colorado.
And that was 2008, right?
The DNC was 2008. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And IACP Denver was 2009.
And then when did CISC come along? When did you guys get that going?
And I can remember when we first started discussing that. But I guess you're right. I mean, Melissa, because you have been involved in quite some time now, and you've crossed that thin blue line, right?
Yeah, because then I started the discussions with eDiscovery around 2011, and then it started to gain a lot of traction in 2012, and then we did some laws in 2013. I think the first one was. So yeah, I just wanted to see, because I wasn't I was building on the momentum you guys already had. You guys already, and rising tides raises ships, and
really, 2000, 9/11, everything changed, right? In Colorado, it also changed, but we're out in the West Coast, in the middle of the country, and we don't get the attention. But I saw how much more the feds could help us, and we saw that even at the DNC, right? We were working with Secret Service, so I had good friends with the Secret Service, and we were all of our federal partners, and that was the growth in Colorado. So from 2007, all the way to now, if you contacted your FBI SACs or your directors, they'll say Colorado has the gold standard of collaboration in law enforcement, and that didn't come by chance. We were recognized as having the best relationships across our federal partners with our Colorado law enforcement through our federal agency. But I strongly believe that started with the DNC prep.
Got it.
Yeah. And then it moved to other things like CISC, et cetera.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And then tell me about, when you and I met. Do you remember where that was or how that happened?
Oh, sure. I remember very well.
Okay.
Yeah. Certain things you remember in life. So, yes, Melissa, I remember very well.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Yeah. And, like always, you it was at I want to say it was in the, it was either a CSOC meeting. It was up north, probably in Loveland.
Okay.
And I met you in
So that was the
general.
county sheriff for the people that's watching. It's county sheriffs of Colorado.
Thank you. Yeah.
Got it.
And our attorney general, I believe, is the one who introduced me to you.
Okay.
And all I saw is a bundle of energy.
Our current attorney general.
No, I'm
the previous one.
Yeah. Anyway. So I remember you as a bundle of energy and a bundle of excitement, and you were going to present this idea of e-discovery, right?
Yeah.
and I was thinking, boy, great idea, kid, but never going to happen because we work in silos, you know. But however I can help, I love the idea. I love the fact that we're going to once again start it in Colorado. I do know we have the collaboration and the working relationships here.
But you didn't think it was going to happen.
It was such a far reach. At the time I thought I'm all in. I don't think this is going to ever work, but I'm all in because you were so excited and you were going to present. And I remember very clearly, I said, law enforcement can be the worst audience there is. You know, you got a bunch of people.
And I do remember you coming and warning me. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I basically was saying you need to connect with them because you're a victim. And we care about victims. We care passionately about victims. But right now you're a tech person. You need to let them know, no, you're a victim that became a tech person to give us additional tools. It was very clear to me you had the path, but you were going to get in front of a bunch of cops who are a terrible audience. And I was trying to give you some advice. We are,
why are you guys so terrible sometimes about it?
Because you've seen so much, you've heard so much, unless that person in front of you has spent a mile in their shoes, or they know you have credibility. And as a tech person, unfortunately, you don't. Right now, I think obviously.
Oh yeah, I've been called so many different things.
Yeah. Right.
Look over it. And I look at you guys now, and I go, "Listen, I've heard it all. I get it."
and you have. And unfortunately, you had to, because it's why you understand it now.
I do.
But those first times, always, I think, I understand it, and I'm sure some folks won't. You're in it because of victims. You're in it to help victims. There is no doubt. I've seen that so many different times, Melissa. I've seen you work, 100+ hours a week for years on end now.
Yeah.
And that is that's not done for any other reason than you want to help other people, and that's what I was telling you that day. I was saying you got a bunch of people who are a terrible audience. You got to connect with them, not as a victim, not as a tech person, but as a victim. And so that's what you did. And
yeah. So joining eBodyGuard, why'd you decide to do that?
Melissa, you are a game changer. You from the things I said, and anybody listening, you're the level of work that you put in is second to none. It's for all the right reasons. It's to help people. Why I got involved in this, I wanted to go skiing, right? That's why I got involved in law enforcement. It was a great job to go skiing. And it lasted for 40 years, right? And it's still lasting, and it's been a great field. Like nonprofit people, I see a lot of nonprofit people do it for the right reasons. They push that rock up that hill, as our good friend Rita Smith says, because that's what you do to help people. It's not because you have a paycheck. It's not because you have a pension. It's because you care. And early on, Melissa, you showed me that that's who Melissa Hart is. That showed me, and you, like a lot of those victim advocates, I think the world of. They do it so passionately because they care. And for me, my job's easy. How do I help? And early on, I'm in my roles, many victim advocacy. I didn't want to do a lot of side stuff, but in my different roles, if there was a way to work with, the Rita Smiths, the Bob Paradisios, I'm forgetting the names, but anyway, there's so many of them. I would jump through hoops to help them. And to be fair, you're at the top of that list, because your brain is crazy, Melissa. Your brain is your brain doesn't work like mine. But that's good, right? We all have our strengths, and what you bring to the table is not, and I used to say this to the other chiefs, it's not what we have in our local municipalities. We don't have the level, you're talking about hiring somebody from DC that, the FBI has on their special group. I said, we got Melissa right here in Colorado. And so, why? Yeah, I'm here because of Melissa Hart. And I see how you can help. And ultimately, because you want to help victims, because I guess that's what I understand. I'm helping victims through you. That's the real answer is I feel like I'm helping victims through you. Yeah.
Wow. I don't even know how to respond to that. That blesses me and makes me speechless. And I will say that one of the things that you've taught me, John, through the process of getting beat up in the arena, like, because I have, and you've seen me get beat up in the arena, is how to connect to law enforcement by becoming less techie and becoming honest in my authentic self and sharing that I am here because of victims, and I am here because of why you do this work, and I am here to make this difference with you, and that was advice you gave me, and I appreciate that. And I also learned from you that even when you're faced with the greatest challenges in the world, which we are going to always have challenges, that the statements that I can look at, I can either look for the good or I can look at the bad. And you've always used this phrase, and now I use the phrase always. Well, the good news is, right. And it provides me the silver lining in the cloud, right? And I've now taught that to the team. And I teach them what you've taught me, which is continue to look for the good news, no matter what. Because if you don't do that every single day and every single moment and lead yourself well, how can you lead others? Right? And I can't thank you enough for that. Truly, I can't. So for me, this has been a beautiful journey for you to believe in E-Bodyguard, but for you to believe in me. So thank you.
Oh, of course. No, that's an easy thing.
Well, and so for the, audience out there that need to know, that they need to believe in themselves, knowing that, they can, it's as easy as and simple as just looking for the good in themselves. And sometimes they're going to run into moments, right, that they feel like they can't even just get up the next step to the big mountain. And, knowing that all I had to do was look for the next moment and find the good news. Take a walk, like you say. Just look for the next good news. And that was always helpful to me. So not only did I complete eDiscovery, but they're still on it in Colorado.
Right.
And now we are charging ahead with eBodyGuard, Smart, Safe Cities. And we're entering multiple states, multiple countries this year. And, there's a phrase and a tagline that I use, which is called keeping you safe wherever you are. What does keeping you safe wherever you are mean to you in particular?
Yeah, that's the beginning of everything, right? So it doesn't matter if it's our children in school, they got to be safe or they can't learn. Mm-hmm. it doesn't. I've done dozens and dozens of presentations to women's groups, and almost in every presentation, I would find out that there's always experts in the room much smarter than me, and I would work to turn that presenter in the group into being me. They'd present, and because I would learn so much, right? I would do bank tellers. I've done a lot of bank robbery preventative talks to the tellers, right? And I found out how many of them are carrying a handgun in their purse, or Phyllis, who had this big knife, that she carried in her purse for all these reasons, right?
Yeah.
And so
they're not safe.
Just listening, you learned so many things about how, the idea of that pink tax that you told me about, and I thoroughly, having daughters, and having loved ones that I hate it that they don't feel safe to go for a walk without a handgun or without all those things, right? So that's definitely the pillar of my involvement in eBodyGuard is people need to feel safe, whatever it is, the student or the woman or the child or the lady going for a walk. They have to be able to feel safe, or they're not going to go for that walk. They're not going to go into that classroom. They're not going to go into that train. They're not going to go to that movie, and they're not going to walk out in that parking lot. And I heard hundreds of stories over many years. I was supposed to be teaching the class. No, I was listening and learning, and all I would be doing is recounting someone else's lessons that I learned from them, who they suffered the victimization of an incident. Some of them very trivial, but it didn't matter, anyway, just a lot of discussions with groups, and specifically women groups, that told me safety is number one.
Yeah. That's why there's a slogan, safety first.
Right.
Because if you're not safe, everything else breaks down. Everything else breaks apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we're moving forward into North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Texas, multiple states, and as we do, what do you think about all that? How do you want to prepare people? I mean, what do you think about that just in America?
Yeah, specifically the recent hurricanes. I happened to be in that hurricane, and that was helpful because you're very vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And your family is not able to reach you. I mean, I had to drive an hour.
I was worried. I was worried about you.
Yeah,
I couldn't get a hold of you. Yeah.
I had so many, family and friends, and I had to drive an hour to get cell service so I could call my bride and let her know I survived. And that's, for me, that's also, in my field, you've had those life or death things, and you've realized, right? You're probably lucky to be here, probably on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
But your family, they didn't sign up for that, right? They inherited that through me in a lot of occasions. So I definitely respect that. It's my job to let them know, hey, everything's okay, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that resonated with me, North Carolina, all those folks, because I was down there at the time as well, and they had much greater loss, and so and also seeing that, understanding the satellite capabilities when all the cell towers were the whole infrastructure collapsed.
You mean with eBodyGuard being able to reach 911?
Yes. Yeah. Because, the house is floating down the street, but eBodyGuard, they can reach 911. So, on a personal level, it's another experience that showed me that, we're looking at all these victimization situations with E-Bodyguard, but all of a sudden, boy, in a natural disaster like we had with the hurricanes or the tornadoes or whatever it is, the same thing's going to come. People need to contact 911.
Well, I think most people live their life, and you don't want to live your life hypervigilant. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You don't.
No.
You want to live your life normal, and you want to live your life where you can take your kids to the mall and you can take your kids to school, and it's not going to be that thoughtful, oh, this is the day that I have to be worried about my child at school. You don't want to live your life hypervigilant, but unfortunately, we have to be thoughtful about preparing for emergencies, unfortunately.
Right. And, as a parent, that's a tough one because, in criminal justice, law enforcement field, you realize you're better off teaching your kids about the bad things that can happen out there.
And it's like that balance, right? How much do you share with your child and then not overshare? And then how much do you, right?
Yeah. Right. Parental decision, but having a tool to assist them is everything, just like the cell phone now, right? Yeah, that's why so many they want the cell phone.
Yeah, way better. I'm with you on this. So I think you and I have the same thought life on how to be able to take care and prevent in a situation like that. So, yeah. Okay, so what else would you like to share, with our audience as we have consideration around what you believe a smart, safer community is for the future?
Yeah, I mean, each community, and having been a chief multiple times, and a law enforcement officer more than that, each community has their own needs, and it's not until you get into that community that you realize what the priorities of that community are. And that's, for the chief, a new chief coming in, that's one of the things they need to do is understand, right? And I did that, with the feds. I was essentially the liaison for the feds in the Colorado region. And what I found is they're coming in for a short period of time, but they have so many resources, and what I would do is say, hey, whatever you need, let me know, I'll help you, because I want to work with you. And because you also are a great partner, you have so many resources, right? The analogy of an E-Bodyguard coming into any community, being able to help. It will help in a lot of different ways. It might help in ways we don't even understand until we talk with that community. That's my recent analogy, in that it's the same thing. We got to work together in the community. I spent a lot of years working with the feds to see how they could help us solve problems that locals couldn't do, right? So many different cases. They gave me 50 federal agents in the small city I was leading because we had a good relationship and we had a great working relationship. They came in and solved the problem that we couldn't have done ourselves. Yeah. That's E-Bodyguard. That's E-Bodyguard coming into a community, but the community themselves, the DA, the collective system, they'll understand it where it's best, where it works best. Yeah. So that's, I think we're evolving in that process, and I think the recent hurricanes showed us that as well. And I think there's going to be so many other things that have yet to happen that we're going to find ways that E-Bodyguard can help. But ultimately, it's working together.
Always collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, I've thoroughly enjoyed spending time with you today.
Always. Yeah. Enjoy talking to you. This has been fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for spending this afternoon with me. And I'm sure the listening audience will enjoy just hearing your stories. And do you have a story you want to share from the time you lived in Boston before we close out? I mean, you've got some really cool stories.
Yeah, I got too many stories.
Anything
Yeah.
you can share?
Yeah, no, the only thing, having an East Coast accent all the time, the kids would always get a kick, and my own children can talk with the East Coast accent, and no, you'd go into the classroom and they say, give me a quarter for a glass of water, right? Or, they all park the car in Harvard Yard. So, no, it's been a conversation piece over the years because they know you're an outsider. Wherever you go, it's a conversation piece, which I like. And no, I always enjoy working with people. I've loved working with you, Melissa. This has been a great, journey, and it's so fun that you've steered this ship. There's no doubt about it. And our country and our communities are going to be safer because of eBodyGuard, and I'm so excited to be part of the journey. So thank you.
It is my personal and deep gratitude for having your leadership here, and looking forward to more. And so really grateful to have you here. So thank you for having this interview, and we are very blessed that this audience is going to get to see it.
Great. Thanks.